Alright guys, what's up? Another video on the new 700 Rubicon for you. Now I have a whole other video on this, links in the description. Like I said from the beginning, Honda was very lazy here. They just took the old 680 Rincon that's been around forever, rebadged it, put a body kit on it, and they're selling it as a new machine. There's nothing new about it of consequence. I said that, people have been arguing with me about it. I'm getting a lot of questions on the Patreon page. People want to buy it still for some reason. So I'm going to show you why you shouldn't buy it and why it's the exact same machine. Now there's some rumors going around that Honda changed the gearing in the new 700 Rubicon, that they put the P700 gearing or that they put the P700 diffs. That is all false, and I'm going to prove it to you right now. So the parts diagram just came out for the 2025 TRX 700 FA. FA means four-wheel drive automatic. This is what they're calling the Rubicon 700. And I went through every single one of these parts in the drivetrain and put them in Excel for you. So you can look in here, you can compare, like here's the ring gear, 19, here's the pinion gear, 18. You look at 18, 19, you can go down here and you can get the teeth counts, 13, 42. You can do that same process for all of the relevant things. We look at the clutch for low range, right? This thing has a clutch for every gear because it's like an automatic car transmission. This website is really clunky. Let me fix it. All right. Yeah, so it's got a clutch for every gear. It's kind of like an automatic transmission type thing. It's goofy. We look down here, we see this big gear right here. This is the equivalent of like your clutch basket gear on most other ATVs. So that's part of your primary reduction. We can go down here and you can see that it's a 64 tooth. We can look at the torque converter because it has a torque converter. It uses engine oil and a torque converter. You see there's a gear on the back of that. We look down here, it doesn't tell us the teeth count. But don't worry, we are resourceful. We found one on eBay. That's the exact part number, and we counted the teeth. Put that in Excel. Also, this torque converter part number is the same as the old 680. So you can do this on and on and on, and you can realize exactly how lazy Honda was. I'm just showing you this if you want to check it for yourself, guys. If you look at final shaft, there is the final gear and your secondary reduction. And then if you go to, they call it reverse gear in here, you can look at these gears and you can find the gear drive. That is what is the small gear in your secondary reduction. So I looked through all of this, I compared all the part numbers, and I can tell you without a doubt there is no mudding benefit to this new TRX 700. It is going to be just as bad in the mud as every other Rincon. It is not geared lower. It does not have a front locker. It does not have more ground clearance. It's a piece of crap. So stop asking me if you should buy this. My answer is just going to be to send you this video with an LOL. Okay, so let's get over to some other things I can show you. One way to calculate these gear ratios, by the way, is to download an OEM service manual. There's not a service manual available yet for the 2025, so I'm looking at an older one here for the Rincon, but like I said, nothing has changed. So you can look here and you can get all your gear ratios and your teeth counts. I verified these against what I'm finding on the parts websites to make sure everything's accurate because errors do happen in the manual. So here's all the gear ratios. Ring gear, pinion gear. I use the rear diff for these calculations. It's the most relevant to me. 2023 680 versus your 2025 700. So you can see all the teeth counts are the same, which means all the ratios are the same. When you do the math, you come out with a crawl ratio of 17.26. We're going to call that 17.3. That is an incredibly high crawl ratio, and I will illustrate that by showing you some comparisons. Okay, I'm going to attempt to give you some context just how high the Rubicon 700 and the Rincon 680 are geared and why they're so bad in the mud. Now, this is not exact math because all of these machines are gear to gear and they have clutches that lock up, whereas the Rincon, it has a torque converter, so there's some slip involved there, which lets you get the RPMs higher like a stall. So it has a little more torque than I'm illustrating here, but it's not too far off. So talking about the gear ratios, this is ignoring the torque converter in this discussion here. 17.3 is an incredibly high final drive ratio, even with the P700 gear reduction out of the Pioneer 700 secondary gears. It only gets you to 22.1. That's a 28% reduction. That's still incredibly high. You can see that the Rancher 420 double clutch, the automatic Rancher, is also a very high gear ratio. I tell people not to buy them. Anyone that tells you that their 420 DCT can turn all 430s in thick mud's full of shit. I don't care. You can cry all day long. The numbers don't care about your opinion. These are the three machines you want here if you're going to try to mud ride a Honda. They have decently low gear ratios. There's gear reductions available for them. And of course, you can put a big gear reduction in a 420 DCT automatic and make it good in the mud. But a stock 420 DCT can't do shit. I don't care what you say. So these are all their final drive ratios. What that means is that for a 500 or 520 DCT, when you're in low range, the crankshaft turns 56.5 times for every 1 revolution of the tire. Gives you more mechanical advantage, gets your RPMs higher, gets you into higher power output and torque output, and it's just better in the mud. And it just goes down from there. Now, to try to illustrate this better, let me hide this column, it's confusing. To try to illustrate this better, let me show you the percent differences. So the way that you would read these numbers here is that a 520 DCT is 7.6% lower than a foot shift. If you have a 420 FA DCT, you are geared, and then you were to step up to the 520 DCT, you'd be getting a 50% gear reduction just because that machine has high and low range. Okay, so those are the same primary gears, the same gear reductions fit these two machines, but you're probably better off starting off with a 500 or 520 because it's already geared 48% lower. So that's how you would read this. Another way to try to drive this home, because I know people really confused about percentages, is this chart I made right here. So if you were to put a 32 onto a 520 DCT Rubicon, most people know that a 520 DCT Rubicon can kind of turn a 32 in mud, thin mud and water, okay? What would the equivalent tire size be on these other models as far as torque? If you want to put the same torque to the ground, ignoring machine weight, tire weight, and torque converter, how small of a tire would you have to run? Based on these ratios, you'd have to run a 30 on a 500. You'd have to run a 26 on a 420 foot shift. You'd have to run a 21.7 on a 420 DCT automatic. Or if you had a Rincon with a gear reduction, you have to run a 12.5-inch tire. I'm not talking rim here. This is tire diameter. And if you have a stock Rincon 680 or Rubicon 700, you'd need to run a 10-inch tire to put down the same amount of torque to the ground as a 520 DCT on a 32. If that doesn't help you understand how stupid these machines are, I don't know what will. Honda, stop making this crap. We're not dumb. I can't believe anyone's going to buy it. And if they do and they pay top dollar for that, I'm just, oh man. There's nothing worse than listening to a stock Rincon try to turn 28s all day and just slip the torque converter all day long. It's obnoxious. But yeah, there's the math. If you want to know how to calculate this stuff, by the way, I went through and calculated every single one of these gear ratios right here. Very simple. All you're really doing, let me drag these columns so you can see this better. All you're really doing is multiplying all of the internal ratios to the transmission. So this first number is your final reduction, second number is your secondary reduction, this is your rear diff, and this is your first gear. You multiply those ratios together and that gives you your final ratio. All these ratios are available in the service manual, not the owner's manual. Owner's manual is useless for Honda. Some machines like Players have this information in the owner's manual.